Okay, so it's 10 o'clock. And it's getting chilly, and I think that it's keeping people moving slower because we don't have as many people here as we normally would, but that's okay. We are on our last week of the Back to the Bible booklet training. This is a 10-week course, and this is officially week 10. So, after this, I think, Bob, you're teaching again next week? Yes. Yeah, I kind of did, didn't I? Yeah. So, last week, we're on page 11 of our little red booklets, and we had talked about the first question on the top of the page. Now, we should be able to get through the rest of this booklet today, and then if we have time, we'll do some review. So, before we jump in, Dan, would you mind opening us in prayer? Thank you. Now, before we get going, I want to encourage everybody that the card writing that we've been doing is making a difference. I got contacted by Helen Coulter yesterday. She's Ray Keel's mom. We've been writing cards to her for a few weeks. And she wanted to say thank you to everybody for how many cards she's gotten. She recently had surgery, and while we didn't know that, we were writing cards about life in general and the memorial of Ray. It really, really encouraged her. She said having all those letters come in helped keep her spirits up. And while she is not able to get out of the house yet, and she's not able to have visitors yet, she is looking forward to coming and visiting when she can, and once she can have visitors, she would like them. So I'm hoping we can get a Bible study going with her. So thank you guys. Yes, sir.
We're going to make that announcement again at morning service. Mm-hmm. We got a couple of others.
That's good. So the cards are working. Yes, ma'am? It's very encouraging to get those cards, and thank you everybody for doing that. And you're welcome. Yes, sir?
Not just keep the cards. We're grateful that people are grateful, but this is all part of this process. So another step for those contacts.
Yes.
And the person who gave us the addresses for them to take the next step.
Follow up. Exactly. So very, very good. So let's jump in. Last week, the last passage we covered, again, we're on page 11 of our red booklets. And we talked about 1 Corinthians 12, verse 13. We had some good discussion about that. And you notice the last question under that passage heading is when. So it asks, how does one get into the Lord's church? And we talked about you're baptized. And then it asks, do you want Jesus to add you to his church? And we're hoping they say yes. If they say yes, then we want to ask when. Okay, when? This is the second opportunity to try to get them into baptism now. And, of course, the goal is to say, well, yeah, let's do it now. But even when should we schedule it, is a when. And then you can talk about, well, we can go do it now. We can do it Sunday. We want to do it as soon as possible, but we can make it happen. So we want to get that question out there. If they say, well, I'm not sure, maybe someday or something, well, we keep going with the study. Okay, James 4. James 4:13. Let's go there. Good morning, Alan. How are you doing?
Great.
Would you mind reading James 4:13 for us? Yes. Well, 13 and 14.
It says, come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there, and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes.
Thank you. So the question is, do you know for certain you will be alive tomorrow? No, we don't. And you want to make sure that you're careful how you ask this. I had a guy one time, apparently when I asked a question similar to this, apparently I sounded a little harsh because he says, "What, are you threatening me?" No, we're not threatening. This isn't a threat. This is just a question. You don't know whether you're going to be alive tomorrow or not. Next question, if you were to die right now, would you go to heaven? Now, you and I say yes. And hopefully, if you've gone through these studies with the folks, and they understand sin and what salvation is, if they say, well, no, then we see, okay, let's push this harder. If they say, well, yeah, I'm saved. Okay, well, let's go through some questions to nail down, because they may still think that they're okay. Do you want to go to heaven when you die? The answer hopefully is yes. Yes, I do. Now, the next, let's see here. The next question has another call to action. And as we go through the next few questions, each question gets more and more geared at showing them the urgency of being saved now. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 6, verse 2. And Jessica, could you read 2 Corinthians 6, verse 2 for us?
For he says, in an acceptable time I have heard you, and in the day of salvation I have helped you.
Okay.
Behold, now is an
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation.
So, when is the accepted time? Now. Now is the accepted time. And this is important to show people, especially people who might have grown up in a background where they believe that everybody was okay and you do a once a year ritual. That no, this isn't something where the once a year ritual we're going to be baptized. This isn't a wait for all your relatives to be in town kind of thing. The accepted time is now. We need to make this happen. When is the day of salvation? Now, today. Has God promised you another day to make things right with Him? No, we don't know what's going to happen. And not to be fatalistic, but we could walk outside and get hit by a car. We could have a heart attack right now. When should you be baptized into Christ? Now. Next question, are you ready to be baptized right now? Again, you see how we keep putting that out there. Are you ready? Do you want to make this happen? We want to show them this is urgent. There's urgency to this. Any thoughts, questions up to this point?
What if they say no?
Are you ready to be baptized now? No? Well, why not? And what I've gotten before is, well, I want my family to do it all together. And so, I want to get baptized, but let's get my wife into a study, and let's get her, and then we can all be baptized together. And I get that. The person who said that had a rather conflicted marriage, and at that point their wife was not interested in doing anything together, much less becoming Christians. And so that was one of those well, you need to make it right with you first, and you'll be the example. You can be the one that starts the trend. And there's some studies that we can pull out that talk about how if the father of the family becomes a Christian first, there's like a 89 or something % chance that the rest of the family become Christians. If the mother becomes a Christian first, it's like a 70% chance. If a child becomes a Christian first, it's only like a 50% chance that the rest of the family will. So if you can get someone to take that step first, and if they say no for a different reason, like maybe, well, I'm just still not convinced, you might have to go back and refresh. The next few questions are going to drive home the necessity because of hell. And so if they're saying, well, it's just not that big a deal, Okay, let's go to Revelation 14. Good question, Mona. Really good question. So Revelation 14:11. And Janet, could you read Revelation 14:11 for us?
In the smoke of their torment, the sun is up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name.
Now, there are a number of passages we could look at to talk about hell. This one specifically speaks about the torment of hell. So will those in hell be tormented forever and ever? Yeah. Will they have any rest? Next page, for page 12, will they have any rest? No. Do you want to suffer with them forever and ever in that awful place? No. And we need to make sure that they understand. This isn't an annihilationism. The Bible doesn't teach that once you die and you're not a Christian, poof, you're gone forever. That's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible clearly teaches that there is eternal torment. And a lot of times people will have this idea in their mind that, well, if I don't become a Christian, it just means I miss out on heaven, but I'm just going to die and I'll be gone. And so, well, living a life of debauchery is worth, not. We need them to understand that the consequence isn't just being annihilated and being gone. It is eternal torment, eternally left in this place of no rest and separation from God. Is that where you want to spend eternity? And I want to give us a little bit of a caution, but it's a two-sided caution. There was a method way back when of evangelism that was basically scaring people into the waters. I don't advocate that. We don't want them to run screaming into the water. We want them to make a reasoned decision to change their life. But if we don't put the fear of the Lord into them just a little bit, if we don't show them there is a fear aspect in this, then we're selling them short. We're not giving them the full picture. Because they need to understand there's blessings, absolutely. There's also punishment on the other side. Yes, ma'am?
Well, it's like, I'm sure with the little ones and teaching them that water is okay.
Yeah.
But in certain aspects, they need to be aware and afraid of it.
Right.
In
A healthy manner.
a positive outcome.
Yeah. Well, the same thing with...
a negative thing.
Right. And it's the same thing with fire. Fire can cook food. It's a good thing. But you don't put your hand in it.
Right.
There's pain.
Ouch, it hurts.
Right. And so you have that balance. And that's the same thing with our teaching. We need to make sure they understand the blessings and the wonderful promises. We also need to understand that have them understand there is the torment that we want to avoid. Now, one more point before we move on to the next passage, and that is personality styles. So different personalities will connect with different aspects of the gospel in a different way. Some people, you give them the blessings that are in Christ and they're like, sign me up. Yes, let's do it. Other people, they're like, who cares? But you tell them about the torment, you teach them about hell, and they're like, whoa. I want to avoid that. So different people will respond to different aspects of the gospel differently. We need to be aware of that and therefore teach the broad spectrum, teach about the blessings, teach about the promise to come, teach about the danger of torment. Yes, ma'am?
You don't want them to get baptized just to avoid hell, which is why you get baptized. You want them to get baptized to live a Christian life.
Right.
And you don't want to just scare them into worrying about hell.
Exactly. Right. And it's also, you want to play the balance. Someone who has high anxiety already and worries about things in an unhealthy manner, you want to teach them about hell. But you don't want them to go into a panic attack, because someone who is prone to unhealthy anxiety, pushing it too hard could shut them down in a negative way. Does that make sense? just want to make sure that we're aware of paying attention to the person we're talking to. Any questions, thoughts about that before we move on to Revelation 20? Yes, ma'am.
One other comment that some people have somewhat fatalistic tendencies of like, well, I'm sure that's probably going to happen to me. 'Cause
Yeah.
I just, I never do anything right. And
Good point.
It can be helpful to take a similar speaking style as you can have with somebody who maybe was committed suicidal. Of like, nobody wants that for you.
Right.
No one doesn't want that for you. And helping them understand it's not that God wants to chuck you in hell. That's not the desired outcome God has for you. For us, that's why we're teaching that concept.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that, because somebody who's got a fatalistic sense of humor or has low self-esteem might just say that, well, that's what I deserve anyways. It's going to happen. There's no way I'm going to do it right. And point out, well, that's not the desired outcome. God doesn't want that. We studied the passages that talk about God doesn't want anybody to be lost.
2 Peter 3:9.
Exactly. And pointing out, that's why we have grace. Yes, we all fail. But there's God's mercy and His grace and His forgiveness, and that's why we need to make this step. So recognizing, again, the personality of the person you're studying with so that you address them in an appropriate manner. Good points, everybody. Let's now move to the positive side of Revelation. Let's go to Revelation 20, verse 15. Now, of course, there's a negative on this too, but there's positives and negatives in all these passages. Could I have somebody read for me Revelation 20, verse 15? I guess it's Dan's turn. Dan, could you read that?
If anyone's name is not found written in the book of life, he is thrown into the lake of fire.
So we've read this passage at least once already. So if anyone was not found in the book of life, he was cast in the lake of fire. Now, we could back up a little bit and see that those who were in the book of life, they don't end up getting cast in that lake of fire. So the question becomes, is your name written in the book of life? Hopefully by this point they understand whether or not they're saved. Do you want your name written in His book? Well, hopefully yes. Yes, we do. So what must you do to have your name recorded in God's book of life? Now, this passage doesn't directly say it, but we've studied enough with the people that they should know the answer. What's the answer? Be baptized into Christ. Right. So do you want Him to write it there now? Again, another call to action. Are you ready to go be baptized? Hopefully they say yes. Great. Let's go. Let's do it. But if they still say no, I'm not ready yet. Well, now let's talk about the sides of the war, as it were. Let's go to Matthew 12:33. Silas, or 12:30. Matthew, you're Silas. Silas, please read Matthew 12, verse 30. I almost said Matthew read Silas 12:30. That would be weird.
Matthew 12, verse what?
30.
Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters.
So Jesus said that if we are not with Him, we are what? Against Him. So this isn't a neutral ground situation. You can't be Switzerland, sitting in the middle, not on one side or the other. Either you're for Him or you're against Him. So this means, paper says, this means that we are either on the Lord's side or on Satan's side. This means that we are either helping the cause of Jesus or we are helping the cause of Satan. Which side do you want your name written on? A lot of people feel that, well, I'm okay just being a good person and, bopping along, doing whatever I want. But we need them to see that if you're not on His side, if you're not in Christ, you're against Him. You're actively working against Him. Now, you might have someone say, well, how so? So how would you explain this to someone who says, well, I'm a good person. How am I against Christ if I'm not, a Christian?
We're not obeying Christ's commands. So how can you be on his side?
Yeah.
Just doing what you want.
Is good enough?
If you look at a lot of the ancient philosophers, Socrates and those guys, they believe that that people were naturally good.
Yeah.
And that may be true to a point, but is that good enough?
Right. And
Not. Even Jesus said, who was good?
exactly. Sir?
That's what Dan's talking about, is the difference between being good-natured and correct.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. And we can look back at all those passages we've looked at already in this section and say, just being good isn't good enough. Yes, sir?
Yes. How about a slow approach of using, well, let's ask yourself, are you a sinner?
Yeah.
And
And
doing it in a gentle way.
right.
What comes to my mind is I watched a movie one time, Kurt Cameron,
Hmm. Yeah.
and how he approached it. He said to the guy, he said, well, do you have this sin? Do you have that sin?
Mhm.
And I think he used the amount of 10.
Yeah.
And if you have one of them, then yes, you are a sinner.
Right.
So I think that goes along with everything else.
Exactly. And that's
Bringing them to the point of being baptized,
right.
being saved.
And that's something you weren't here for the study, but we actually talked about that at the beginning of this packet. And you're absolutely right. That approach that this set of packets or this set of studies goes through does that of showing, yeah, we need to build that foundation. Because if we start at this point and just say, you don't know me, but you're going to hell, you should be baptized, yeah, that's not going to work.
That's going to back somebody up.
Right, exactly. So we got to go through the whole thing that we've talked about. Yes, ma'am?
Well, in the booklets, it talked about sin, and it talked about the uniqueness of the church, but they may need a little bit more insight into, okay, well, let's talk about your influence.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be on Jesus' side if you can't teach your children how to follow Jesus?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that foundation yourself, how can you influence others to be on Christ's side?
Right. Exactly. So we need them to see this is a big thing. This isn't a stay neutral on the fence kind of thing. Hebrews 5:9 speaks about this. So, Keely, could you read Hebrews 5:9 for us?
Hebrews 5:9. And having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all those who obey him.
So Jesus will save those who do what?
Obey him.
Obey him. So if you're not obeying, then you're not going to be saved. Next invitation question, are you ready to obey Jesus' command to be baptized? See, we keep asking this question. We keep trying to get them to see this needs to be done now. So the last page, page 14, is titled Counting the Costs. And this is something that's important for them to see, that they need to understand that this is a lifestyle change. Olivia, oh, we're already there. We just read it. Keely just read it. Hebrews 5:9, we just read it. Must we obey Jesus to be saved eternally? Yeah. So will you obey him? And you might want to talk about this is not just about only baptism. This is about following his commands going forward.
And David, this would come in, the difference between obeying and thinking you're good.
Yeah.
I liked what he said back there. I wrote it down because that made a lot of sense. Good versus being right,
Yeah.
You got a lot of people who sincerely believe they're going to be saved.
Yeah.
You can be sincerely right, you can be sincerely wrong.
Exactly. And being sincerely wrong is still wrong. Exactly. Oh, yes, sir.
Saying, when we think about a congregation, this one or any congregation, you stand there and you preach, you look out across the audience. You got to wonder how many people are good and how many people are correct. You can sit in here all day long and call yourself
Yeah.
Say you went to church, or whatever term you have, and you think you're good, but if you're not correct,
Yeah.
then you're not a Christian. So, I mean, that comes following this, but we can't fool ourselves. These people we're studying with should not allow themselves to be fooled
Right.
and understand, I must be obedient.
Exactly. You got it. You know, I can sit in a stadium all day. That doesn't make me an athlete. You know, I could go stand in the grocery store all day. That doesn't mean I work there. We need to obey to be in him. Keith?
I'm thinking too that at this point with this packet, if you've reached this point, you've been studying with this person for 3, maybe 4 weeks. And that's a lot of time for those concepts to have sunk in.
Yeah.
And so rather than like booklet 1 and booklet 2, where you can ask a question, they can give an answer, and you can just keep moving on, each of these calls to action, that awkward pause
Yes.
is really important.
Yeah.
Rather, because I know my tendency is to be like, well, let me give you another reason to answer positively or answer the
Yeah.
right way. That tendency removes their responsibility to think and answer
Yeah.
honestly. So with each call to action, you can't really talk again unless they give
A concrete
an
answer.
honest answer that they're really thinking.
And she brings up a good point, especially for those of us who are extroverts who like to talk. We don't like silence. And so a dead space in a conversation makes us feel weird, and we want to fill it with words. And that can be detrimental. Letting them think about it, letting them answer the question, not interrupting their thought process. And some people, when you're studying with them, will need to talk things out just a little bit. So they may verbalize their thought process and talk themselves to the right answer if you give them the time. But if we interrupt them and keep pushing them, we're going to talk about it in one of my sections in the marriage seminar about giving them mental breathing room, of giving them time to think, letting them have that time to process before pushing more. Good point. Thank you, Keely. Olivia, would you read Revelation 2:10 for us?
Do not fear any of those things which you are about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life.
Thank you. So, we're looking at counting the cost, and the question is, must we follow Jesus faithfully to be saved eternally? The answer is yes. And this passage is a good place to talk about, as Christians, we're not promised a cushy life. We're not promised that everybody's going to like us. People, if we're standing on the truth, will dislike us. They'll think that our very lifestyle is judgmental towards them. And so we need to realize that, when you become a Christian, you might have some hard times. But we need to endure them. We need to stick it out and stay faithful so that we can reach that crown of life. Continue on to Matthew 6:33. Kevin, that's right. Did I get it right? Do you mind reading, or do you want to pass it on?
I don't mind reading.
Okay. Could you read Matthew 6:33 for us?
But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you.
So, must we put God first in our lives? Yeah. Seek first his kingdom. Will you promise to put God first in your life? Hopefully the answer is yes. Yes. Now that means that that's our highest priority. And later, once they're baptized and we get them into a new Christians class, we can talk about more of, okay, what does that really entail? He comes before job. He comes before relationships. He comes before money and prestige and position. That can be a hard thing to contemplate, but we want them to know that he needs to come first. Sir?
You just brought like a question, this might
Right.
One time I heard my spiritual father say, there's a way of doing it. You're either pushing God away or you're pulling him towards you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's something that is important in a new Christians class for them to learn how to pray and how to address the Father in an appropriate manner. Absolutely.
So if you're not accepting, you're not receiving.
And that's, like I said, that's an important thing for new Christians to be taught. One more final passage. Remind me your name. I'm sorry. Denise. Do you mind reading Hebrews 10:25 for us?
Let us not give up making together as, I'm sorry, the words are a little too small.
That's okay. Somebody else can read it if you got it. Thank you.
Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching.
Thank you. So must Christians be faithful in attendance?
Only if you want to abide by verse 24.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead and read that for us.
And let us consider one another. There's another word there that somebody had.
Mm-hmm.
And let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. You can't do that if you're not with brethren.
Exactly. You can't do that if you're not together. Next question, will you be faithful in attendance to attending the service of the Lord's church? Hopefully they say yes. And hopefully we've gotten them to visit service in the process of this study. After you're baptized into Christ, where do you plan to worship? Now, this is an important question because the hope is that they say, well, at whatever the local congregation of the Lord's church is. But if they say, well, I'm going to keep going to the Baptist church. Okay, let's go back and let's study the uniqueness of the church again. You might have to re-emphasize some things. But hopefully if you've gone through all these things and you get to this point, they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to worship with the Lord's church. So that is the Back to the Bible booklets. Any questions about that last little bit before we go into a few minutes of review? Silas?
What if they say, well, I don't know where a Church of Christ is?
Well, that's a good question because then you can say, you know what? I will show you. Let's go. Because if you're studying with them in person, well, you can show them. You're there. You're going too. Now, if you were studying remotely, like over Zoom with somebody, then you would have to do maybe a little bit of digging, find a congregation in their area. But if you're studying in person, that's a pretty easy answer because come with me on Sunday. Oh, good question, Silas.
Zoom meeting, nowadays we know that's possible, or even a phone call with somebody in the next state.
Right.
Do a little homework ahead of time, find the local church around
Yeah.
them.
And I can be willing to bet that if you call a congregation and say, listen, I'm studying with someone over Zoom, they're just about ready to be baptized, you could probably set up a personal meeting with them, with somebody in their area, pretty easily. I know that if someone called me and said, hey, I've been studying Back to the Bible booklets with this person in your town, they're about ready to be baptized, I'd say, yeah, count me in on that. Yeah, I want to help out. That's awesome. So you can probably find someone from one of the local congregations to do that if you're studying over Zoom. Good statements. Okay, so we have thusly finished the Back to the Bible booklets. We have 10 minutes left in class, which is just about perfect for us to do a little bit of review. So, going way back to the beginning of our study, 10 weeks ago, what method of getting a study started have we been talking about? How do we get them in the study in the first place? Invite them into our homes. For what reason? Food. Food. Yeah. Hospitality. Have them over for food. Now, the first time they step in your door, do you assault them with time to study the Bible? No. What do you do? Get to know them. Find out about them.
Don't care how much you know until they know how much you get.
Exactly. So that first time that they're at your house and you're having dinner, what is the main focus of the evening?
Friendship.
Yeah. Now, do we focus on telling them our life story and everything that we like to do?
No.
What do we do?
Talk about the favorite subject.
Yep. Focus on them. Talk about their favorite subject. Ask them about their life. Make them feel like the most important person in the world at the moment. You want to find out about them. Then, what do we do at the end of the evening? Invite them back. There's a saying, and it's not 100% true, it's just a really good saying. The purpose of any meeting is to set up the next meeting. You make sure you set it up. Because if you leave it like, oh, let's do this again, it's gone. It may not happen. Okay, process question. If you say, well, let's do this again when you want to do it again, what may happen?
I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I'll get back to you. So what is a very effective way of setting up the next time? Have a time. Hey, you want to do this again next Thursday? Friday, Saturday, Monday, whatever day. You want to do this again this day, this time? Well, no, I've got a doctor's appointment. Okay, what about this time? You have your times, you have your backup times ready to roll. Because if you're concrete about it, you're way more likely to get the next study. Okay. Next study comes, or next visit comes. How do we get them to actually sit down and study these things with us?
You've got to know them and you find out where they are religiously. It's not there. And say, hey, we go to Legs Region Church of Christ. Where do you go to church? You know.
Yeah. And never underestimate the direct question. Would you be interested in studying the Bible with me? Simple, straightforward. Absolutely find out about their religious history, find out about who they are, what motivates them, and maybe when they find out that you're a Christian, they may open the subject. We had that happen with a lady, and we've been trying to get a study set up with her again, but she straight up said, I've got questions about religion. Could I ask you some questions about religion? Yes, absolutely. When do you want to do that? Let's set up a time. And unfortunately, because of her life situation, we keep inviting her back, and she hasn't been able to yet. But yeah, sometimes they'll just ask, and that's awesome. Take advantage of that.
We have in Concord, there's several ladies that would get together once a week and have a craft.
Yeah.
You know, my mom knit, crocheted, so she did it all. You know, I do a little bit of knitting, crochet, forget it. You know, somebody else, you know, comes in working on different knitting projects, and it's like one woman, hey, can we do card? You know, and she brought her friend, and you know, it could be something to that aspect.
Right. Well, and when you have a contact with someone like that, you know.
And yes, it's in the church building, but don't get scared.
Right.
We're, you know.
And that's a great opportunity to go to the next step and say, you know, I'm glad that I met you. Would you like to come over for dinner? And start that process. Absolutely.
I'm thinking maybe let's mention that.
That'd be fun.
Build things.
So
Okay.
we've got a garage. We could. There he is. We got a garage. Oh, okay. So we've got them in the study. We are sitting down. What is one of the first things that we want to do as we are in the actual Bible study? The survey. Why come? Why come? How come?
To see where they're at.
Do we see where they're at? Yeah. Now, do you have to give it to them like take this written exam for us?
No, you can ask them the questions.
You ask them the questions. Now, who's filling out the actual survey?
Another person with your
Silent partner. Yes, absolutely. Silas.
So, you also want to find out where they're at so that you don't play the wrong base for it, because what if they don't believe in the Bible? Then you have to do back to the Bible.
Yeah. Believe the Bible. You're right. You are absolutely. You want to find out what their belief system is. Now, Silas, I'll ask you directly since you spoke. What if they have kids?
Them to bring their kids.
Good start. This is have a babysitter on hand. If you've got older kids like the Whitakers do, it's their job to keep the kids distracted. If you have younger kids like I do, well, then you might want to involve another party and say, hey, we're going to have a Bible study. Would you mind coming and just keeping the kids corralled for us? And we have it easy. We've got Nana and Pop at home. So we can say, Bob and Linda, could you watch the kids? But if you don't have kids and they do, you might need to involve somebody else, or the silent partner can take that role if that is something that has to happen. But you want the kids taken care of, entertained, so they're not distracting. Okay, moving into the actual booklets. What is the first booklet aimed at? The authority of God, nailing down where we get truth and what truth is. Absolutely. How long should that study take?
90 minutes.
About 90 minutes. What's the second booklet about? Oh, that's the second book. This one's the first one. This is the second. It's got 2 on it. What's the second booklet about? The church. And why is it important for us to study the church with them? There's a lot of different churches out there. Right, and we need to have them understand the uniqueness of the Lord's church and why it matters what church you go to. Absolutely.
The summaries in the backs of the booklets are helpful in that it's a quick snapshot of, in that case, it was the church and why the church. And
Yep.
Here, yes.
Exactly, and that summary, it's good for you to know what's in the book so that you can teach it properly. On that note, before you get into the study, before they're even there, what should you be doing? Reviewing. Review the material so that you remember. Because even if you've gone through the class and you've taught this before, if it's been a month or 2 or 3 since you've gone through these, you might forget. And it is never a good idea to be like, oh, what are we talking about next? And if you remember what's coming next, if you've reviewed it, then when they ask a question, you can say, great question. We're actually going to be answering that on the next page. So let's hold on to that, and we'll answer it in a minute. So, because you know what's coming. How long should the second study take? About 90 minutes. Right. What's the third packet about? Salvation. Right. And in that, we talk about what? Heaven and hell. Their salvation. We talk about what sin is, why sin's a big deal. We talk about how to get those sins washed away. How many calls to action are there in the end of the book? Trick question. We didn't actually count them. There's 4. Is it still 4? I think it's still 4. Yeah, it's 4. Why do we have so many calls to action?
They may have baggage that's making them hesitate.
Yeah.
And so they may need additional time to evaluate whether this is worth it.
Right. Exactly. We've got like a minute left. So why is it important to leave around a week between studies? Yeah, time to process. If we slam them all 3 books in one setting, or day 1, day 2, day 3, all in a row, they may not have time to fully process the information because we're probably going to be giving them a lot of information that is new to them, and we want them to internalize it.
It's like going to the doctor's office and, you go through all your stuff and then you leave and you go, oh, I forgot to ask.
Right.
So you have that time between point A and point B for them to come up with maybe another question or 2.
Yep. Exactly. You got it. And giving them that time to process, to ask questions, to say, that means this and this is really important so that they are making an informed decision. All right. Yes, sir?
Also to make, to give them, like
Yeah.
So it will raise, or could raise questions.
Right, exactly. And that's healthy.
And I mean, it's great to have all these Bibles that have different translations and stuff, but I would probably make sure that I have the most easiest to understand and comprehend.
Yeah, we talked about that basically you want to have one that is at their level, but also make sure you have the same Bible they have, so you have the same translations. I'd love to keep going, but we're out of time. So thank you all for your attention, for your input, and next week, it'll be in Bob's hands.